This is Morning Express. It is now 5 minutes after 7, and it's time for The Way It Is. Before I introduce the panel that we have this morning to have our discussion and just give it as it is, let me just look at some of your comments that are coming through regarding our question of the day. And the question this morning, of course, is given the political rhetoric that we have had left, right, and center, the push and shove that we have had both from the the governing coalition, and that is Jubilee, and the Accord coalition, which is the opposition. The question is, are we getting closer to a political resolve? And looking at the results so far, let me just see if I can pull that out. And so far we have 60% who say yes, we are getting closer, and 40% saying no, we're not getting any closer. Let me start with some of the comments that have come through. We have Paul Otieno Onyango, who says the issue of IEBC is more than politicians, so it cannot be an agreement between them only, which of course is one of the things that the Accord coalition has been pushing, saying that it should not just be decided by politicians, but it is wider than that. We also have somebody who says, I believe that government, before being efficient, they must be ethical first. Okay, thank you for that. Let me see if I can read one or two more comments. And we have another comment here, which is from Evelyn, who says, well, as long as we're still taking it out on the streets, not soon. And that is, of course, Shisha Monday, which has been called off today. But the opposition has been very clear that should there be no resolve by Wednesday, then Thursday they resume with the demonstrations. Let me now introduce our panel this morning, and I'll start off with my immediate left, where we have Ambrose Weda, who is a lawyer. Good to have you, and I hope you had a good weekend.
Kabisa, it was very good.
Karibu sana. Next to him, we have Honorable William Okech, who already had started off with us on the newspaper review, who's an advocate of the High Court, but also a political commentator. Good to have you.
Thank you.
And later on, we're going to be joined by Senator Omar Hassan, who is running a little bit late. And once he comes in, I'll introduce him. But let me start with you, Ambrose Weda, in regards to your comments and your feeling regarding this stalemate that has been going on now for a while. But there seems to be some progress, given that now, for starters, we have the hard stance that were there earlier seeming to soften both sides. We have the Jubilee government, who had categorically, through the president and the deputy president, said that there was no negotiation. If there was any to be done, let it go to parliament, which is according to the constitution. But there seems to be now a shift right there.
Yeah, I don't think there's a shift on the part of the Jubilee administration. What they're simply saying, whatever is agreed on, whatever it is, it has actually to be legislated upon. Government speaks through legislation. Without any form of legislation, there is nothing. What you can see, which is emerging clearly, is that courts issues were not basically IEBC commissioners. It is calculated grandstanding to have a myriad of what they call reforms in various aspects, and then have it anchored in law. I had also said here before that whether or not the commissioners would go was a foregone conclusion. They would definitely leave. How they were leaving, again, is through parliament. So what is happening is that court has added a list of issues. They want the commissioners to go. Now they have added the secretariat. They want it restructured. They want various electoral reforms to be done. In fact, they even want, I don't know whether it is constitutional amendment or something. So all this are to gear towards the next 2017 elections. But if you look at it very well, Jubilee seems to have said, okay, have it. Have it as you want. At the end of it, CORD has demonstrated to the people of Kenya. In fact, there are people they have scared, stiff, was scared. They have consolidated their support base. In the same token, they have lost quite a number of peace-loving Kenyans. So I see the end is coming.
Why would you think that they have lost support, given that, according to the Accord coalition, they have been maintaining that this is for the good of the country? The elections 2017, one of the things that took us to where we were in 2007 was disputed numbers. So that needs to be clear.
You see, yes, you see, let me tell you, if you look at the dispute by court, as much as court was disputing, the fact is that a gap between Honorable Raila and Honorable Uhuru of 800,000 plus Kenyans know that at least one of them lost. Now, what is happening today, if you looked at the riots, let's be fair, apart from Modama,
These current riots? Or
these ones, the ones we're having now.
IEB,
the IEBC
Occupy
one.
IEBC
Yes,
riots.
if you look at the current ones, it is Modama, Raila, and a particular community. In fact, it is one particular community, Kisumu, a little bit Migori, Siaya, and a little bit
When you
Nairobi.
say it's a particular community, what do you mean? And do you mean that it's just a particular community that
Actually,
is going to demonstrate?
let me be open in the name of Christ. It's just Luz and Mudama. Now you get it. The other leaders, if you look at the MPs from Mukambani, they are not there. Look at the MPs from Kisii, they are not there. Look at my brothers from Mombasa, Akuna. It is just the member, even the senators, a few, just Orengo and Nyongo, the rest under the table. And CORD also has MPs from Taita Taveta, from Malindi, from all these things. If you look at the intensity of the riots, just a bit kidogo in Kibera, Huruma, and then the epicenter, Kisumu. It is not there in Machakos. It is not there in Ngong. It is not there in Kiambu. It is not there in Bongoma. It is not there. You see it.
Okay.
So this is the truth. We are saying it's alienating the base that eventually we see and say, CORD leader, my brother, there are people, the base has been, which word do I use? They have coalesced now together. But the others have also been scared stiff.
Okay. Let me at this point introduce Senator Omar Hassan, who is the senator for Mombasa County, also the Secretary General for Wiper Party. And karibu sana, Senator.
Thank you
Good to have you. And you've just found on the back end
And you
of
look
Ambrose
much
weather.
better when you are fasting. It's much better. You should fast much longer.
If, the whole year should be Ramadan. I agree with you, but in fact, the whole mood is very different in Mombasa, Muslim zones. It's a very good month. But the only thing I wanted to say, if you will allow me before, you know, I've been invited severally for fasting. This is not a month of fasting. Fasting is not fasting. It's a month for sacrifice. So I'm starting to have my reservations whether I will be attending to these invitations, unless on account that you shall cook or you shall make sure that your dishes are far less than what we usually have on a normal day. It's supposed to be the time when those who are less fortunate also have something to smile about. But this is the time when people lay out cuisines that are 10, 12 assortments. That's why people think, oh, this is the month Munakula Sana. To the contrary, it's supposed to be a month of sacrifice. You know, one of the things I learned from my wife will do just one basic meal. She says, you know, this is the month that even if you can do several dishes, you do one basic meal. And I think that's exactly...
Just to give you energy to go through the next day.
Please, just do your little brown bread or brown chapati with your boiled meat and stuff. Just let it be so basic. So that people can then give the rest to sacrifice to those who are less fortunate. And that's the whole idea of this month, in the remembrance of God, in the remembrance of the poor, in the remembrance of, many other areas of society. That's why people say pray for peace. But I definitely had my brother Amos.
And what I'd like you to come in from is, he's made a comment here which I'd like to hear from you, that it's mainly, it seems to be a community that is demonstrating.
In fact, I also saw the Luo Professional Caucus from Nyanza, led by my brother PLO Lumumba and Rafael Tuju, saying that it has tainted the image of the community. I don't think, it is true that some areas that are perceived or real strongholds of ODM leader Raila Odinga have been the ones that have been most engrossed in the demonstrations. But I think even last week, as we met in the CORD PG, people took note that it will be important to go beyond Migori and Kisumu, and when talking about Nairobi Kibera, because of the perceptions it's creating. But the truth is, even if there might not be some energized demonstrations in some parts of the country which are also called strongholds, In terms of the disbandment of the IBC, people are unanimous about it. They're categorical about it. In fact, my brother Weda himself believes that, the exit of the IBC is a matter of time. And as we've stated here, some of us hope that as they exit, we will be able to decimate who is guilty about what and attach equal responsibility, because the issues about fair play run supreme in our constitution, the presumption of innocence, so that we don't usher in a group of people that we condemn, like the ECK of post-2007, so that we retain the integrities of those who we know have done nothing wrong. And I think there are quite a number in there who might have done nothing wrong.
Okay, so do you feel like there is suddenly, or rather not suddenly, but there is a shift in terms of us getting closer to a resolve, politically speaking? There seems to be a shift of goalposts from both ends. I mean, we have the Jubilee coalition saying, okay, fine, we have now agreed, we'll have the talks, but here are 11 of our appointees who are going to have the negotiations. We have CORD saying, no, we only want 5. Are we getting closer to a resolve?
I think these are just issues of semantics. Who wants more people, who wants less people? How should the structure of the dialogue or the process be? How should the select committee be constituted? I agree with the CORD position that we should have a ceiling of about 7 or 5 for that matter. Because when you escalate the numbers to 14, 11, you're talking of a committee of 22. And we realize from our own experiences, the lean committees from the Senate, which are constituted of about 9 to a maximum of 11, are fairly more efficient than we go to the National Assembly committees, which are almost at about 26, 27 memberships. So that then they have a way in which they drag back processes. So I think then there are certain issues that need to be navigated. I heard Senator Sonko saying that there will not be rubber stamps, which effectively means that how then, because there are safeguards to whatever commitment or whatever outcome of these talks, are you going to subject them again to parliamentary process, where then some people are dissatisfied with, let's say, with some of the avenues of bargain, can then take it upon themselves to amend because you go some of those areas, because you can't stop that. Once the motion is before Parliament, it is owned by Parliament or whatever bill. So you cannot stifle debate. You cannot tell people not to amend. So even if I try to amend, we can have a consensus that amendment shall not go through, even if you want to exercise your mandate as a member of the legislature. Okay. So I think those are some of the pertinent issues, and I'm hopeful. I'm sad to see that people threaten that the country is doing badly on account of street demonstrations, a country that is not able to stomach the shock of just a constitutional right like to picket or to protest. Then shows that it has extremely weak, not only social fabrics, but also weak institutions or structures of government.
Okay. Let me come to you, William Okech, and just to hear what you have to say in regards to us getting closer to a resolve, and just your comments on that.
Yeah, I think the road is still quite bumpy, although there has been a de-escalation of the previously hard points. But now the issue, just like Hassan has said, the issue of form and structure and the process will most likely bring in another deadlock, because the CORD coalition is now insisting on a process which is outside the ambit of Parliament, so that whatever resolution is reached passes through Parliament unopposed. Now, that now brings out a dilemma, because you'll find that there's the supremacy of Parliament under Articles 98, that Parliament is supreme and Parliament is mandated with that authority to make laws that is binding. So whatever agreement that is reached, if it's within Parliament, it will be perfectly in order for such agreement to be adopted by Parliament and discussions to be had on it, and proposals to be amended and counter proposals to be even given on the floor of Parliament. So it will still, I think that issue needs to be tackled. Is it going to be a parliamentary process? Is it going to be a supra-parliamentary process? Is the outcome going to automatically be endorsed by Parliament? Just like I had said earlier on, that in instances where the country is under an extreme emergency, just like we had in 2007, 2008, where from all corners the country is under siege, that is when, like at that time, there was the National Accord, which was discussed, negotiated, and it was passed as it is in Parliament. But right now, I do not think the country is under such an emergency. So it will be very hard to have a situation where whatever it is that is discussed by a committee passes through Parliament without the people's representative giving in their input.
The input, all right. Yeah. Let me come to you, Ambrose Weda. And of course, we do know that according to the reports that we have, one of the reasons why one of the, shall I call it, the people who have weighed in heavily on this is diplomats. And foreign diplomats, for that matter, because of course there is interest. Do you think we've reached a point in this country where we're politically mature to solve our own problems without necessarily having foreigners, help us out?
No, I don't think we are in a stage where we would be able to solve our own internal disputes at political level without people we perceive to be somehow neutral. If you look at the grandstanding on these things, especially positions, for instance, you find court says we want negotiations outside Parliament. That is on the presumption that the president and the deputy president have a single bullet that they can always hold on Parliament. They tell Parliament, here is the agreement, endorse it. That's the wrong presumption, okay? And that presumption therefore means that should there be a situation where Parliament says, no, we are amending what you have said, there will still be a stalemate that requires other people to come in and say, look at the reality of the country. So we cannot live in isolation. It will take time. But for now, if we don't have faith in IBC, faith in the Supreme Court, faith in Parliament, faith in the presidency, faith in the opposition, it is all therefore requiring a situation where we must have other people. The diplomats not only come in as arbiters, but they have power and clout. And threats. Sometimes to bring somebody like the court leader on the table, you must issue a few threats to sometimes even the president or the deputy president. When they are too grandstanding, they're told, no.
Calm down.
You must be some big brother somewhere who says, no, and this no is serious. Otherwise, if the diplomat, I'm sorry to say, from Kuwait or Mauritius or Seychelles, was to call the president and say, we want to come on the table, we'll dismiss them in the morning. If one from Burundi or Rwanda tries to tell President Uhuru what to do, he'll call Kagame and say, can you have this one sacked from Nairobi? So there must be the diplomats here. We are talking about particular diplomats that we deal with.
Omar Hassan, I see you smiling.
That's derogatory. I think what happens is, even if you come from a small country, you can have moral power in the sense that I know countries, let's say, in the Middle East that are fairly small in terms of their leverage, even in terms of their population, but they leverage fairly massive interest because they've decided to be a leader in terms of capturing first and foremost public opinion, both local and possibly international public opinion, like Qatar. Qatar has been a country that has been extremely dynamic in terms of being, taking almost the right positions of almost all international issues in the Middle East. So it is possible that it could be a small nation, but the only problem about these small nations in Africa have also very small deeds. They're just small in every regard. Presidents with small minds, nations with small deeds, and they are small in their orientation. So even if they tell you, it's like those things in life where you look at somebody who's telling you and you look at the character of the person and you're like, how can this guy be my counselor in any particular way? So I think that's the kind of situation we have.
But what are your comments in terms of us being politically mature to a point where we can now resolve our own issues?
I think the bulk of the efforts have been by locals. The clergy, I think, this time have been instrumental. I must commend them. Whenever I see Bishop Rotich anywhere, and my brother Abdullah Abdi, our elder, I know that they are people of a certain moderation. Bishop Rotich, I have a particular bias towards him because he taught me at some point in the Kenya Military Academy. So I think that said and done, I think and also Canon Karanja. So I think when you look at that representation, I think they have been able to lever a certain and broker a certain undertaking. And I think largely this whole framework is supported by the clergy. What we don't know is we want to move to now having that committee of two of peace was to agree on a framework, because you see there's been intermediaries and they have been able to take one thing to this other place and one other thing to this other place. So at least in terms of narrowing the divide, they've done something and gotten a commitment on either side that they will pursue the talks. Now, the talks must have a framework. Even the Kenya National Dialogue and Mediation process had a framework. What are the critical issues? What are the membership? What are the rules of the game? How are we going to make decisions? How are we going to implement the decisions? And I think it's in everybody's interest to reform the IBC as it stands now, because I think that the image has been severely battered to a point where I don't think it was even feasible to go with it into the next election. And I always put these qualifications. I do not have material issues with some of the commissioners on board. I know that they have done nothing wrong. They are simply victims of circumstances. So that said and done, I think we need to also to protect the character of good women and men within that commission. And then therefore then usher in a new IBC that has legitimacy from both ends. And see how we move on. I think that's an obligation we have leading towards the commitment. Only one thing that I will not accept: any of these mediation negotiations should not intend to have an extension of the life of Parliament. We must go for elections in August 2017.
Which
I have seen a lot of
MPs
people
had
putting it on.
alluded to, yeah.
I've seen a lot of people putting it on the table. I'm told when Jubilee MPs suggested it. I'm happy to hear that President Kenyatta rejected it. And on our side, we are unanimous that we don't support an extension of the life of the current elected leadership.
All right, William Okech, assuming IEBC commissioners by tomorrow possibly are not at work, what's the next way forward? What's the way forward after that?
I think that depends on the structure which is agreed in the proposed talks, yeah? In how do you get in place a new team. But then, before even reaching there, there's already a divergence. Because you're aware, if I caught right the words of Mr. Kalonzo Musyoka, that other than getting the IBC commissioners out of office, there's the issue of a new voter register. There's the issue of cleaning up that register. There's the issue of overhauling the electoral system. But you know, care ought to be taken, because you find that there are those amendments which can be made without passing a constitutional amendment per se. Because there are those amendments, if you go into them, then you'll need a constitutional amendment, some of which may even need a referendum, like when you want to change the electoral system, yeah? Like moving from first past the post system to maybe the one of collegiate system. So there are still some sticky points which they ought to agree with, but ideally, should tomorrow come and the commissioners are not in office, then a new team should be elected in a fair and transparent manner, just like Article 10 of the Constitution provides, where there's public participation, where there's representation and there's confidence, so that once they come in now, then they look into the other nitty-gritties of the electoral system. How do we guarantee that the voters' register is clean, there are no ghost voters and such like. So I think the elephant in the room will be to address how do we get a mechanism that will bring on board a team with confidence of all parties.
Okay, Ambrose, whether your comments on the way forward once now this is resolved, should the IEBC officers, which you've previously said it's a low-lying fruit, or that all it needs to do is be picked, assuming that it's just a matter of time that they leave office, what are some of the structures that need to be in place? Because again, we could find ourselves here 6 months down the road after we have replaced just the faces of the commissioners.
I think the amendment that is required that will bring contention, once they leave office, the law would then be on the president to pick 4 people on the selection team. Those will select the commissioners. Maybe that is what will be amended, so that Honorable Raila Odinga and his team can also have a say, so that they pick their people, so that whoever is picked, okay, is seen to represent their interests, because they're the people crying so much, so that they do not complain once a new set has been put in. Now they have brought in the question of the registers are dirty, all those things. Those are administrative issues that can be tackled very fast. As the president said, I dare still repeat, the final bullet is with the people. You have the numbers, you are in. you don't have the numbers, it doesn't matter how clean the register becomes, how all this. So I think for now, I still urge my brothers in the IEBC, the commissioners, it is in your hands. Do not wait for people to die like this. Do not wait for all this grandstanding just because some of you are saying money. Money you will earn. God will give you more money even outside. If they woke up today and just said, ladies and gentlemen, it is not worth these deaths and this grand and these stories, we have quit. This is our resignation letters. That will be a big game changer. Big
This whole
game
discussion.
in this whole discussion. And
Senator,
I'll be sincere that I've talked to one or two of them because we are human beings, and money doesn't appear to be their fundamental considerations. I think their professional integrity and the integrity as persons is what appears to be the thing that is a driver towards a settlement that will guarantee their exit, not necessarily a handshake. Yeah, you were asking me about being a commissioner.
Yes, I was saying that you have worked as a commissioner before, and for the sake of the country, it is true, like you've mentioned, there are those who possibly have their hands clean, but for the sake of a country, shouldn't we get to a point where we can be mature enough to say that, fine, I have nothing, I'm not guilty, but for the sake of the country?
You know, one of the reasons you see me quite heavy on this matter, I've been in a similar situation. And I know how it feels when people throw allegations all over political actors, go on political platforms to attack you left, right, and center, and you do not have a consummate or a reciprocal political, platform to launch
respond.
Similar attacks or a political constituency that you drive, and you can sway in terms of majority opinion. So for me, I think after this should be the amendment I'm contemplating, or the kinds of changes I'm contemplating, is beyond just the reformation of the IBC. It's also about the preservation of these commissions. We saw President Uhuru Kenyatta almost, kicked out the ESCC just flimsily. A petition was presented. Even my brother here was appointed to the tribunal. So these guys thought rather than drag themselves through the mud, which is really neither here nor there, they decided to exit. We have removed IBC through protests. Then there will be no incentive to be a commissioner in the first place. So we need to protect commissions after this. For these ones, there's glaring circumstances upon why we want them out.
But one might argue and say that the current constitution actually protects them. They have to.
Yeah, that's why people are referring us back to the constitution, that, let us do it constitutionally. But you see, there's also, it's not as simple as they put it, because when they wanted the ESCC out, they exercise the constitution in a fraudulent manner. You see, you can also use your supermajority in parliament, to literally, whittle down constitutional officers and bully them to submission. So, in fact, that sent a scare. The exit of the ESCC. I'm a commissioner at heart, and I hear their grievances. They have felt themselves on the spot. In fact, most of them cannot wait for their terms of office to end. Most of these commissioners come from very illustrious professional background. My brother Ezra Chiloba just exited, the UN systems and took up a job in the IEBC. So I think there is a way in which I feel their concerns, I feel their grievances. William Ruto, Deputy President, and Keter, and a few others who became, ultimately some of them who I'm now serving in Parliament with as senators or members of the National Assembly, were on political platforms asking for my prosecution, asking for me to be taken to court. And I recall a summons was issued to me by the director of the CID, that is Degwa Muhoro. And it was the intervention of the late Mutula who I went to, and I said, listen, I have been summoned by the CID. So he wrote a letter, which he told me he was going to talk to President Kibaki at that point, that if you want to investigate a commissioner, there are constitutional avenues towards the investigation of a commissioner. So that was, in fact, in the morning I was called and I was told by Mutula, I've already briefed Kibaki, the late Mutula, so you don't have to go to the CID. So everybody thought I was very brave not attending to a CID summon. But it was because I think I went and I pleaded my case with certain cabinet secretaries.
But to come back to the matter at hand, Senator, what is so difficult? I mean, we understand all that, and there's the human side of things in that you've left a job and come to another one. But with this particular case,
this particular one I said is unique.
It is not just the opposition court that is saying that we have an issue with IEBC as it currently is. What is so difficult about the commissioner saying, look, given the fact that people don't have confidence in us, we are not guilty, but let's give us our pay, we go home and do what you have to, for the sake of the country?
I said ideally it should not be easy. It should not be difficult. Yeah, that's what I want to agree with you. I don't know what is part of their motivations, but the one or two who I've spoken to is that they want a settlement. Not because of the money, but because they want to ensure that there are safeguards to their integrity. Because you know that right now, we are positioning them as criminals. You know, from some, let me tell you, there is where in which one or two feel that they are being said to have stolen an election, they are being said to have, you know...
they have chicken gate
holistically, whereas the chicken gate is just specific to one or two. They are said to have botched the Okoa Kenya referendum. So they want to plead their case in terms of the fact that they need some kind of exit from some of those allegations. So, and these are some of the areas of negotiations that people will have to deal with. These are definitely areas that will be on the table. In terms of the exit, what kind of safeguards we do assure that.
Let me just clarify this. And I think the commissioners need wise counsel. They are not in any position to negotiate anything. They should see that. In fact, the negotiations is about their exit and replacement, not about insulating them. And you cannot be insulated if you committed any criminal offense.
Yeah, that's true.
But you see, they're still innocent.
Yes. What we're trying to say is this. I know I can talk about my classmate and friend, Isaac Hassan. Up to today, I have not seen anything wrong he's done. Okay? That would warrant him to fear. That would warrant anybody to come and say, oh, look, we're insulating you. What I am saying is, look at what Saitoti did when Raila Odinga was coming into Kano. You know, whenever Raila Odinga is coming in, there's always earth shaking. People must suffer. So Saitoti was being shoved out to enable Raila to come in. And it was in such a humiliating manner that the late Saitoti said, the nation is bigger than an individual. Let me go quietly. He left quietly. There was nothing wrong he had done. He came back very strongly. My people in the commission, people are dying. Let them not look at the sides, the back, or anyone. Let's just look at the country and say, this grandstanding that court has put in place, and people are dying, and today is the holy month of Ramadan, and they don't care, they're still going on with violence. This is the thing where they would say, look, it is not worth it. It is not worth the money. It's not worth the office. The country is bigger than us. Whatever it is, we pave the way. That is all. One day history will judge them better, much better. It is that act that Saitoti did. Sometimes the act of saying, if it is me that you think is causing you trouble, I quit. That is the act of statesmanship or statesmanship, an act that history will register positive. But if they wait and receive money, I saw yesterday it was you 200 million to send them. If they pick that money, already Kenyans will be saying they were earning too much, they did this, they are given money. Then second, if they get some form of assurances, then it means they also feared they were guilty of something. The worst thing, if I sat with them in a room, the worst thing is to carry your books and say, gentlemen, I wish you well, I did my part, my heart is clean. May God protect and save me. Hallelujah. Only.
For the sake of the country. Let me come to you, William Okech.
Yes.
And one man who I think will be remembered in history for having literally hung his boots early for the sake of the country would be the CJ, who is leaving office in another 2 days.
Yes.
Are you concerned, being an advocate of the High Court, are you concerned that he's leaving too early, given that we already have issues with Supreme Court, although he is on record saying that the fact that we have issues at the Supreme Court does not mean we have issues at the judiciary?
Well, the Chief Justice, Willie Mutunga, had made a personal choice that he's taking a sabbatical for the 1 year to his retirement, because he'll be turning 69 on Thursday. And thereafter, he opted to take a sabbatical to allow for the recruitment of a new Chief Justice, so that at least by the time of the next elections, the new Chief Justice has settled into office and has familiarized himself in preparations for the anticipated presidential elections. Well, as it is an individual choice. Just like what Ambrose says, the ideal situation would be for individuals to make that kind of sacrifice and say, well, we have come this far, but because of 1, 2, 3, we are stepping aside. But still, Kenya as a country and our ethos, our culture, our systems, I do not think we have not yet reached that level of maturity, political, democratic. Unlike certain countries like you find in the Orient, Asian countries, where the issue of particularly family integrity and family honor is valued so much. That's why you find that in such countries, Korea is in such countries like Japan, when even an issue touches on a public servant that is discrediting to his name, you'll find that they opt to resign. Some even have committed suicide for having been implicated. But now in Kenya, typical Kenyan style, it has been I'd rather die than resign. So I think we have not yet, that would be the ideal situation, we have not yet reached that level. In terms of the CJ exiting, I think it was a good move for him to give time for the new CJ to be recruited, for that new CJ to settle in office. As much as there are controversies right now in the Supreme Court of Kenya, I think there are mechanisms to deal with that. Right now there's an ongoing case to determine the retirement age of the judges. Well, the Supreme Court could likely make, there's a proposal, they could likely make a decision that as currently constituted, we are conflicted. So therefore, we recuse ourselves, we cannot handle this matter, and then the decision of the Court of Appeal will stand. And that one will solve the whole thing, and the recruitment of both the CJ and the DCJ would go on.
Okay. Senator, your comments on the CJ quitting and, literally putting the country before himself, because if he was selfish, he could still earn that extra year, but he's retiring early. Are we going to, do we see ourselves, politically speaking, getting to that level where we have politicians literally putting the country before themselves? Because as it is, it feels sometimes like it is more their wish than that of the country.
I mean, I think the CJ has set very high standards. It's the bar he has set is so high. And I actually, maybe I'm a bit biased because I know him personally. I think he's actually very sincere about mentorship of younger people to take over, creating a very clear ideological frame of mind. I think he had such a battle in terms of the little reforms that he has tried to initiate within the judiciary, some of which is fairly impressive, even in terms of, just changing the judicial culture. Today you can go more confident and expect, particularly at certain levels of the courts, and expect a fairly more legally, sound judgment that he has dealt. There was a meaningful and very deliberate way in which corruption also was fought. I remember yesterday I watched him in his what we call a closing arguments, which was he was being hosted by James Smart.
Yes.
So I was watching him, and at some point he said that presidents should be in their 30s and 40s. Actually, he was trying to say that, he's old now. One person, I think, thought he was attacking a certain presidential candidate. So he came up very, 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 telling him, you have done nothing, you do not reform the judiciary, and he says, listen, I see your anger, but I didn't mean me. I just meant for myself that I feel fairly now at 69 that I can't have the rigors of leading a country, but you can vote somebody even if he's 100 years old. So I think what happens is he set the bar so high. I think in my assessment, his legacy is quite well defined. I think he's one of the public servants who has walked this space of public service, who I can say is fairly a good model to emulate. I know we might not have agreed with him, particularly with the presidential petition of 2013, but on the overall, as his performance in the judiciary, I think he did fairly well. He was very candid also. He was not a muted CJ. He spoke about many issues. His speeches always carried the headlines of our newspapers. In fact, whenever Willie spoke on a matter, thematically, it will definitely hit the headlines. It will definitely create a national debate. It will cause ripples. So I think he did extremely well, and he created a voice of integrity. And for me, those are some of the very few civil society actors, and those of us from other backgrounds like the reforms background who came into the space of public service or government and tried to steer with some of the values that they had imbibed within the realm of civil society or other professions they are undertaking. So I'm hoping those of us who also come from similar backgrounds will try to steer and navigate at least through that very sometimes murky waters.
Okay, well, regarding the presidential petition, he did say that he's going to write it in his book. So hopefully that is a matter that can be laid to rest, because I guess for a long time it has been held against him by the CORD coalition as to why he made the decision. But of course, in the book, he's going to do that. Whether your comments on whether we can mature, politically speaking, to a point where we can emulate what the CJ has done, because of course, glowing tributes to him for putting, or rather for quitting when he did, just for the sake of having a new CJ in place by the time we get to the elections.
Yes, let me tell you, our problem is, the problem of the human being is mutating and thinking that you are God. In our families, you start worrying, if I'm not there, what will happen to them? You think you are God, therefore you don't want to exit. That is what Mugabe thinks. That's what Museveni thinks. I remember at one time even a local president was thinking that way. But if you trust that these people are born, Kenya was born before you were born, Africa has been there, the world has been there, you play at that stage and you reach a time when you say, let me go. I hear people talking about the CJ leaving when there's a crisis. There's no crisis that will not solve itself. The CJ will quit on Wednesday. The Supreme Court will solve itself, and the country will move forward. So what he has done is not only highly commendable, but that is what now sets the stage for us to examine. Did he achieve? Because we should always look at achievements at the end. This tendency of examining people either when they are working or when they begin is wrong. You pass exams after you have done them.
But there's what they call continuous assessment.
the continuous assessment, those ones are to make you better, to prepare you so that at the end of the day, the legacy is good. So as he quits, we will be looking, in this period, has he done well? Somebody like Weda would say is one of the chief justices in Africa who have insulated the judiciary from external interference. From his own interference as a CJ, he's not on record as interfering here, and then insulating that institution from even people like the president with all the powers, so that in Kenya, the president and the opposition can do anything, and the court will very quickly, including parliament, very quickly say, that's nonsense, put it aside, and we carry on. So that is very good. And I think I would pay a glowing tribute to him and say what he has done by quitting a year before. I wish Rawal would have seen that. I wish Tunoi would have seen that. I wish most of us in offices, even MPs, some people are serving forever. You are party leader. It's been in government forever. There must a time when you serve. Al Gore went for elections. Okay? He actually won. He was told, don't concede until the Florida votes come in. They did a abracadabra. Somehow they told him, oh, you have known, you have this and that. He quit politics. There comes a time when people have to quit. If we learn to quit as people, we stop thinking we are God. You go and tell the court leader it is time to quit. If President Uhuru was to lose the coming elections, we ask him, quit. He would not say, I still have another chance, I'll contest again. The Africa would start growing. So I thank the CJ for that. And
Will William allow me? There's one thing I wanted to flag. First, William made a very important point, which we must not lose. It's not that the CJ forecasted, he's not made of God fiber or prophetic fiber, that he forecasted there will be a crisis around this time. He gave ample notice for grounds that he stated, that I want the successor to have fully set in by the time he comes closer to the election, because it was going to, whichever way, May was his sunset next year, which will have been too close to August of next year. So for that reason, the CJ had actually given notice to the GSA so that they start the process of recruitment. I'm told the GSA refused, said you go first, and then we will start the process of recruitment. So you can see how the GSA itself is skewed. in that regard. So the crisis was fermented largely by some of the bad decisions the GSC made. Secondly, I wanted to flag, and I think this is where the moral strength by Willie Mutunga came through. He made a wealth declaration, if you did see.
Yes.
Just some very humble little flat here, little piece of land there. I can tell you the net worth wasn't coming to anything close to 100 million shillings. Because he did not steal. Because he was not a thief. Because he was not these big corporate, boardroom, white-collar, blue-collar criminals. He was able to stand on a moral ground. That's why integrity matters in public office. You cannot take corrupt people alleged to have done all manners of things, and bring them to the altar of dispensing justice and equity. So they definitely fail fundamentally, be it in the realm of politics, be it in the realm of public service in its entirety. So he was not subject to some kind of a radical surgery that he survived. He was not subject to the internal dynamics of the judiciary, where you could have been the yesteryear judges, or vetting or something of that nature. So therefore, there's a scar, there's a deep, black scar in your professional undertakings. So he came in fairly, showing that he came in fairly because he had served as a lecturer, then joined the civil society movement, was the executive director, KHRC, was Ford director of the Ford in East Africa, then CJ. So it means that he had a professional sphere that literally insulated him from the rigors of stealing and other public issues that would have actually cast him in bad light. So that way, and the lack of temptation to start interfering with procurements like some people did within the GSC, wanting to have a piece of everything. That got him out. It gave him the moral high ground. That's why he could stand up against anybody. If he was also one of those who one judge came and katiad, how would you even be in a position to order an investigation of one of you?
And I'll come back to you, because one of the important points you bring out of the CJ, which I believe we should emulate as a country, is the fact that he is one who goes with integrity. And of course, would like to know if the leaders that we have currently and those that we're projecting to have for 2017 really do have integrity. But let me first of all come to William. And William, he's been criticized, the CJ has been criticized for not following through some of the things and reforms that he was supposed to have brought in the judiciary. Would you agree with that, or would you contest with that in terms of having followed through and ensured that they are done before he leaves office? Yeah, well, that one speaks much to the management style, leadership style, because he has been cited to have been hands-off, manager, whereby he delegates too much, okay, to officers whom he trusts in, okay. Well, isn't that now the basis of having a good structure, so that when you exit office, the office still runs? It's not run by an individual, but there are structures that are there that actually run the office. Well, I would say you cannot persecute him solely on the basis that he delegated too much, because as it is, if you are an officer of competent suitability and you've been trusted with a public office and such a task is given to you, I think it will only be fair for you to pay back in kindness, and do whatever it is that you are obligated to do. There are instances where it is said that he never followed up on issues delegated to the former chief registrar, that is Madam Sholei. It is said that he never followed up on issue of financial misallocation, particularly on the issue of the CJ's house, which there was a whiff of some scandal around it. But then, personally speaking, as from the horse's mouth, as someone who has been in the judiciary, who is still in the judiciary, I think his leadership style is one which lets people grow. You grow in your specific area, because he has always been adamant that if you are caught in the wrong, then you'll be individually culpable and you'll individually answer. So, and one of his greatest points is that he has ensured a decisional independence of both magistrates and of both judges. Because never, since 2011, it has never happened that you get a phone call from the Chief Justice's office telling you, bring this file, do this, decide this.
That has never happened. That one cannot be taken away from him. So I think the whole of this thing has just been a matter of his leadership style, which has been hands off.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Ambrose Weda, an important point brought about by Omar Hassan here in terms of integrity. Would you say that the Jubilee leadership is one that we can actually say is full of integrity?
You cannot call, when you talk of integrity, you cannot then talk of a group.
It's individual.
Individual. And integrity is actually when your spirit, your soul, and your body is united. And is united in honesty, united in truth, is united in
That's
what
a
is
good
right.
definition.
When you are that united, then you will no longer fear. And when you do not fear, you see these thefts you see around all over, is as a result of fears, fear of the future. So you try to insulate yourself from hunger, poverty, all sorts. So you say, let me steal as much as possible. I'll use it to ward off. But when you have the integrity, then you will not live in fear. If you look, I would say, if you look at the president on major decisions, major, I would say, in my view, is he has integrity. Okay?
But integrity, you cannot base it on major or minor. Integrity is integrity. So when you say major decisions, do you mean on the minor
the ones
decisions?
we see, they are minor decisions somebody does under his bed, surely. You may not know. We are looking at him as a leader, and I'll say, you'd see that he does not act on fear. He does not seem to go out there to collect as much as possible. When you come to other spheres and other leaders, you can't say as a group, because some of them, you see, I saw in the newspaper, Mutai Nguni collecting
12.5 million excess.
if you added, the one was 40 million, the other one was 60. I don't know what consultancy you do to a thing like National Youth Service, unless you are in telephone with Jesus Christ and you bring some miracles which are not down here, to be paid 100 million. You know 100 million? Yani Mutunga is worth less than 100 million. Mutai Nguni earned it on one consultancy. So you can see the reason why even Mutunga is living so easily. He didn't steal from anybody. He didn't hurt anybody on economically. So he has no fears. He's saying, I can go in the morning or I can go at lunch. My brother here is still loudmouth and talking deep and can talk at anybody because he has not stolen. So he does not live in fear. After he steals, then if he starts talking, we'll be telling him, my brother, you know this file, Uhuru can open it. and he will be quiet.
So you should pray for me not to go in that direction.
We are praying for you,
yes,
so that you don't. So we are saying integrity is essential. In fact, any Kenyan who wants to have personal freedom, have integrity, and you will be free at any time. And interestingly, our Almighty God, Jehovah Jesus, will always make sure you have enough food, because good food is generated by a good name. Imagine if you have a good name, I can just tell Hassan, do you have 1,000 shillings there? Oh, give it to me. Because of my integrity, he will not ask me why. He'll just give you. I learned, interestingly, that even big loans, they are not given on the basis of security. They are given on the basis of integrity.
All right, I'd like us to wind up. I'd like to hear from Senator Omar Hassan as we're winding up. Yeah, as we're winding up in terms of integrity and what Kenyans really need to look out for. We're heading to 2017, and we have talked about corruption from time immemorial. But we are told, and it is said, that we are a reflection, or rather, our leadership is a reflection of the society. What do we need to do as Kenyans, or are we doomed?
I think that's literally harsh, because the conditions upon which we elect leaders is a bit rigged. It's rigged ethnically. It's rigged in terms of poverty, so you use resources to manipulate outcomes. It's rigged in many regards, so you cannot necessarily use this process as a fundamental measure. But if let's say the Americans voted Donald Trump, then you can say that it reflects their idiocy in that regard, because they have had factors that are almost constant in terms of democratic play. But for us, the condition is so rigged that you cannot say because we elected Governor so-and-so or Senator so-and-so, he's the best amongst us.
How do we
I think what happens is there is a general public awareness that is coming up at the heart of it. And let me tell you something. I have a friend who's carried out elections across the board, not only in Kenya but elsewhere, who's advised me that elections must be run on three things: person, in meaning including personal integrity, programs in terms of your agenda, that's the 3 Ps, and party comes last. Party becomes the basis upon which you have identified yourself within a certain ideological framework, but it actually comes last. First, you have to distinguish yourself. Are you a social democrat? Are you a thief? Are you what are you leaning towards? Secondly, you have to have programs that make sense, that are reasonable, that actually address the aspirations of the society. And third, therefore, then you integrate this in a political party. And that's why even there's the avenue not to be in a political party, like an independent candidate. So this is because if in fact it goes to the fact that you do not have a country, what is it called? A party that reflects your ideological leanings. So that person, which will be the first, is actually the last in the Kenyan context. You come and say you are so coded than anybody else in this region. You can't see I've always been photographing myself close to Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka. Vote for me. I'm their close ally. Yet your person is so flawed, fundamentally. Okay. Yeah. So what you need to do is to now have character in the center of our campaigns. And you know, in this country, society of ours, when you start to address character issues, it becomes an attack. Yes. But if you look at, for instance, Raila Odinga, the enigma, he's always about character. He'll always talk to the character of the individual or the character of the adversary. Okay, sorry. Director says that we're really out of time. William Okech, I'll have to cut you off on that because time is up. But thank you very much, gentlemen, for the way it is. And I'm not even able to read your comments right now because of time. That's why we're going to wind up the way it is. But we've got some news updates coming up right here at the top of the hour. That'll be at 8 o'clock Kenyan time. So do stay with us right here on Morning Express.